I'm Tanner Gottschalk.
I'm Frias.
And I'm Lindsey, Pollock.
And this is our presentation over the Tacoma Narrows Bridge.
Okay, so we created a timeline of events to show kind of how everything happened with the bridge. First, they couldn't really get things started with it until they got it approved, and so that's where in 1937 the State Toll Bridge Authority was created. They finally got a budget plan a year later in 1938. With they got a grant of $2,880,000. That was a grant, and then they had a $3,500,000 loan that they had to pay back once the toll started coming through when the bridge opened. In the summer of 1938, they had plans developed to finally build the bridge. And by the end of the summer, they actually had the anchorages constructed and finished. And then starting in July through November of the year 1938, the towers were constructed, and the tower construction was started. And they started superstructure work after that on November 23rd. And then in September of 1939, pier and foundation phase was completed. So now that they had a lot of the bridge finished in 1940, they started the floor system in March, and it was completed by June. They also installed 4 hydraulic buffers for the wind because they knew that might be a problem in May of 1940, and the bridge actually opened on July 1st. Well, the hydraulic jacks didn't actually work because they had to put temporary tie-down cables in October, and on November 1st, one of those broke. So they had Farquhar Carson, an engineer. He was doing studies because they had problems with the wind and making the bridge gallop, as they called it. He was doing studies throughout this whole entire time that the bridge was open, and he completed his studies on November the 2nd, and they were going to start plans to fix what was wrong with the bridge so that it wouldn't collapse, but it was too late because the bridge collapsed on November the 7th of 1940.
Tacoma's Narrow Bridge was originally started getting introduced as an idea after they realized that building a bridge between the Tacoma Narrows of Washington and crossing to the Olympic Peninsula would be a great economic benefit. And so the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was built between November 1938 and July 1st, 1940 as an economical and political crossing. It was built across Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. When it was built, it was the longest suspension bridge that was ever made at that time, and so it was thought to be a great success for Americans and ingenuity and engineering everywhere, basically. Trusses deep in the structure were made because they thought it would give it a more graceful look. The problem was that they also took designs from smaller suspension bridges that were made earlier on, and they took that design and basically just scaled it up without taking into consideration, there's limitations on 3D models that when you scale it up, there's limitations on the effects that it will have. So that had some problems to do with the bridge's collapse. And once seeing that the bridge swayed to and fro, they called in Farquharson, engineering professor, to figure out how to fix the problem. And he also figured out that it was the wind pushing against the girders that caused it to give it that galloping motion that gave the bridge its name, Galloping Gertie. By the time the problem was identified and the solutions were established, the bridge had already collapsed before they could actually initiate any fixing of the problem, so that was pretty much useless. But it did end up giving engineers the information to know that there are limitations on scaling up old projects, and it gave them more information about vertical winds and wind tunnels. It established qualifications and research for future bridges. And so later on they built another Tacoma's Narrows Bridge, and it has survived through the years.
Okay, so the collapse of the bridge happened on November the 7th. They kind of knew that it was going to happen because on November the 1st, the east tie-down cable actually broke due to high winds. They temporarily fixed it, and they were having Farquharson. They were having Farquharson do studies to see what he could do to fix the bridge from the wind so it did not collapse. On November the 7th, as I stated earlier, he had actually finished his studies, and they were actually starting to get prices for materials, and Professor Clark Eldridge was starting sketches of the wind deflectors they were going to put on the bridge, but it collapsed before they could do anything. And it says that in 45 days they would have had the bridge completely fixed, but it collapsed. So on November 7th, Farquharson had actually gone to the bridge to take some pictures and do a video of the motions, the rolling motions they call them, of Galloping Gertie is what she was called. And he actually, did it on the day that it collapsed, so he actually caught the collapse on video. There's a part, I'm going to show you the video of the collapse, and there's a part where a man's actually walking on the bridge. He's trying to save a dog, but, he didn't get to save the dog. That was the only casualty. So, we will show you the video now.